Joan Collins' career has spanned 7 decades, from a 50s Hollywood starlet to the queen of the soaps in the 1980s. Her behaviour may sometimes have been risque.
I mean, she had so many boyfriends in Hollywood that they gave her a wonderful nickname. They called her the British Open.
But she's never allowed her standards of dress to slip.
All right, she's behaved like a tramp, but she always dresses like a lady.
Joan's fantastic figure is legendary. We go on the hunt for ways to recreate that perfectly proportioned 50s silhouette.
This kind of cinched-in waist, full circle skirt would have created that real hourglass shape.
Reveals some unusual techniques to reproduce her flawless skin.
Not only enhancing the potential of the skin, but actually firming the skin.
And have our celebrity hairdresser recreate that show-stopping Dynasty hair.
Hairspray in the 80s was the main ingredient. You've got to hold the hairstyle together. They didn't want it to move.
This is the changing face of one of the world's most enduring stars. In 1933, Joan Henrietta Collins was born in Paddington, West London. Most of her childhood was spent here, and at 16, her teenage acting ambitions were fulfilled when she gained a place at RADA, one of Britain's most prestigious drama colleges.
She had something. She had some special attraction. Of course, men went for it in a big way. At RADA, she was surrounded by all the male students. I mean, they couldn't do enough for her. She was very, very pretty. And they taught her deportment, how to speak terribly properly, awfully enunciated, how to dress, how to walk. Basically, sort of starlet's charm school.
She never graduated. Her talent and her looks had not gone unnoticed by the British film industry, and by just 17 she left RADA when she was signed to Rank Films.
J. Arthur Rank was the biggest film company in Britain, so it was very important to her career. And they offered her a contract which earned her the modern equivalent of more than £50,000 a year.
For a young Joan, the money was too much to resist. But like RADA before them, Rank Films would attempt to control how she should act and look.
They were told they always had to be immaculately made up, immaculately dressed. In those days, they always had to wear gloves when they went out in public.
You were trained how to be, well, I guess in the case of Rank, a British company, you were trained how to be a sort of English Rose, really.
Her appearance and behaviour in public may have been steered by the studio, but Joan's rebellious streak started young. She had a mind and look of her own.
I was quite what is known as a beatnik or a hippie. And that, I mean, I had long, straight hair, and I didn't take too many baths. I mean, you know, a few. I did. And I featured the long earrings and the black stockings. It was a bohemian period, and it was not considered the way to do it.
Joan always wore a fringe down low over her eyes. She wore a lot of black makeup around her eyes, black sweaters, black shoes, and huge golden earrings and lots of golden bracelets.
This unapproved bohemian style didn't affect her growing popularity, and for 2 years she appeared in a handful of small British films.
She made a film called Our Girl Friday, in which she played the part of a pretty girl marooned on a desert island with 3 men in very skimpy bikinis, hot pants, and the men are all lusting after her and trying to seduce her.
Off-screen, she was a big hit with the men too, and she wasted little time hooking up with a popular British film star, Maxwell Reid.
Max Reid was a famous Anglo-Irish actor at the time. He was extremely handsome, blue eyes, charming. He was a rank star, and they called him the Beautiful Beast. He was 31, she was only 19, so quite a big gap.
They were the darlings of the British press, 2 of the biggest stars in the country happily married. Joan rapidly became a favourite of the English tabloids.
She was voted by the British Photographers Association the most beautiful girl in show business, in films.
On the London scene in 1952, Joan and Maxwell were the fashionable star couple, out on the town every night. It may have been all smiles in front of the cameras, but behind the scenes all was not well, and the marriage lasted barely a year.
She claimed he was a sexual sadist. She claimed that he was very moody, violence, swings and whatever. So they didn't last very long, and she was soon taking up with other men.
Joan spent 4 busy years at the Rank Film Studios, but still, she never hit the big time.
They didn't quite know what to do with me because I didn't sort of fit into the English rose kind of thing, and I wasn't that continental. So I played young hookers, young juvenile delinquents, didn't know what to do with me. So they sold me to Hollywood, and they knew what to do with me.
In 1954, when Joan was 21, Hollywood came calling. Fox Studios offered her a contract and she jumped at the chance. It was time to leave her old life in London for new challenges and new horizons. Los Angeles offered a much sunnier outlook for both her career and her social life.
The word went round there was this new limey chick in town who was really rather up for it and extremely attractive.
Joan became the belle of every Hollywood ball. Her notoriety as the British party girl flouted the studio's strict codes of conduct for their starlets.
It was written into the contract that if you behaved badly or did anything to bring the studio into disrepute, you could be fired without any warning.
If you wanted to be famous, if you wanted to be an actor and you wanted to make it, then you had to put your life in their hands.
There were only 2 kinds of women, girls who did and girls who didn't. And nice girls who didn't and saved everything until they were married, and bad girls who did the opposite. And so I decided that I thought that it was rather an unfair situation, and why shouldn't a woman be able to do more or less what a man did?
I mean, she had so many boyfriends in Hollywood that they gave her a wonderful nickname. They called her the British Open.
The partying and the many boyfriends may have contravened studio rules, but Joan got away with it.
Today, pretty much anything will get into the media, but then it was much easier to close down stories. And I think as far as Joan Collins was concerned, in a sense, her image was tempered because an awful lot about what she got into reportedly never even got into the media.
As Joan's busy social life hadn't hit the headlines, it didn't hinder her career. She was a popular choice with the studios. Her face fit and her look suited the time.
1950s with Joan Collins was very glamorous, but with an edge. We got that short fringe, that, should I say, page boy back, the glamour, the sheen. You know, it was when women became really sexy, and Joan Collins had it all.
When in the 50s, Joan Collins had the perfect hourglass figure. You know, she had those boobs like zeppelins and tiny little waist, beautiful hips, beautiful curve on the hips, very good pair of legs, very shapely legs.
So how hard would it be to achieve the iconic 50s silhouette? Hannah Turner-Vokes is a lover of all things vintage. She scours markets in the UK for the best outfits at the most competitive prices.
Portobello, kind of historically, has been a great place to find bargains for vintage. There's a massive array of stalls selling things from the 1900s and the 1980s. And they do have lots and lots of pieces from the 1950s.
Joan Collins will have been in her prime in the 1950s, in her early 20s. This shape, this kind of cinched-in waist, full circle skirt, made even more emphasised by this underskirt with netting, would have created that real hourglass shape. It's got boning in the front bodice, which would kind of sculpt you in nicely, and then has this balcony bra effect with the kind of cupping at the top there. This kind of dress is very popular nowadays. It's really flattering on the modern day figure. The bust is incredibly high. That's because they would have worn a conical bra with it and possibly a girdle as well to create a balcony for the bust. So it creates this kind of real 1950s Hollywood figure that everyone desired.
Hannah's vintage clothes shop in London's Hip East End is a mecca for those who want to recreate the look of the 50s and 60s.
So this is a prime example of what Joan Collins would be wearing underneath one of her fabulous 50s frocks. This is a 1950s roll-on corset. It's obviously got the kind of industrial zip there. The elastic is incredibly tough. So what this did is you popped it on and it sculpted your waist in and out and down. It's got the inbuilt bras that would kind of have the uplift of the 50s figure that was so desirable. And of course there at the bottom you have room for your suspender belts, so that would hook on. So this is the real kind of hourglass figure creator. This lovely black satin number is a real kind of stylised shape from the 1950s. It's nipped in really nicely on the waist. Even the neckline on this dress is sculpting the body in terms of making it look wider at the top and then further in again on the bottom and then kicking out. This dress is a modern version of the 1950s dress. It's a bodycon optical illusion dress. It's got these clever lines that are kind of sculpting the body visually. Whereas before we would have the structured underwear and the sculpting, this is just all in the kind of illusion of the black lines shaping the body. The time and effort that goes into making something like this kind of beats this one hands down.
Joan was now 22 and co-starring with some big Hollywood names in period dramas.
The first film she made in Hollywood was called The Virgin Queen. It was a story of Elizabeth I and Sir Walter Raleigh. Elizabeth I was played by a glowering, rather ugly Betty Davis. Joan is one of the Queen's handmaidens.
Joan knew that in 50s Hollywood, looks were everything, and she quickly soaked up beauty tips from those around her and began to create her own signature look.
Well, Joan Collins arrived in Hollywood when Marilyn Monroe was really the apex, and I believe that Joan later said that she had makeup tips from Marilyn's makeup artist Whitey Snyder, who taught her that sort of perfect porcelain doll face that's real Hollywood screen makeup.
At first she felt that they were overdoing the makeup and that they didn't really know how to make her up. And she decided from a very young age that in future she'd always do her own makeup.
Behind the scenes on the movie sets and from those same makeup artists, Joan got her first knockback.
The makeup girl said to her, "Well, hair's so thin, you're going to have to wear wigs." And she thought, oh God, you know, I'm not perfect after all.
It was a bitter blow to a woman whose looks were so crucial to her working life.
If you have very fine hair, as I understand she might have and always had that hair, most likely she inherited that hair in nature from her family and she couldn't have the look she wanted. There's not a lot you can do about thickening the hair like with medicine or with surgery. A woman often uses her hair as a feature of her identity. It's a statement about her personality, and women like to change their hair quite often. They change their hair styling, change their hair colour, and if you haven't got it, then you can't do it.
If Joan couldn't do it with her real hair, then she'd make it work with wigs, and so began a lifelong commitment to wearing them, rather than having her real hair on show. With an active working and social life, Joan was seen in all the right places and with all the right people. She certainly looked the part, but did she sound it?
The cinematographer is a dedicated artist. He's the man who comes on the set very early in the morning before any of the actors arrive.
Joan's voice is very precise, so she enunciates really clearly. Her lips and tongue are working very, very hard.
He checks the lenses and then he straightens the lights.
It was very thin, very squeaky, and an awfully posh accent. She had to try and improve that, although I don't think she ever did.
The nominees are Milton Krasner for An Affair to Remember.
As fashions changed through the late 50s into the naturalism of the early 60s, it starts to sound a little unattached to anything. It's got no realism or grit in it or natural sound.
Nominees are Milton Krasner.
It's a sound out of sync with its era.
It wasn't long before Joan's voice wasn't the only thing that was outdated. Times changed, styles altered, and her look was all too soon out of fashion.
Joan Collins arrived in Hollywood too late. Let's face it, Elizabeth Taylor had already cleaned up as far as the brunette sex pots were concerned. So she was never going to be a great big star because the star system was almost, fading away anyway by then. And by the 1960s, movie stars were, people like Mia Farrow. They weren't the sex pots of old. I think all of those movie queens who rocked the sort of 50s goddess look found the 60s quite challenging.
If Joan's face no longer fit, she at least had other priorities now. In 1961, she'd met and fallen in love with husband number 2, another British actor doing well in the US, singer-songwriter Anthony Newley.
Well, she almost gave up her acting career altogether. For the 8 years she was married to Tony Newley, she decided she would become a loyal wife and mother. She had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and even did the housework, I think. I think she only made 2 or 3 films in the 8 years that she and Newley were married.
She faded away a little bit in terms of profile when next to her husband, who was very much, despite his failures, and he had some failures as well, but even his failures were kind of these heroic failures, groundbreaking failures. And so Joan, who'd been seen as a bit of a B-movie actress, sort of definitely was in the shadows compared to Newley.
When the marriage broke up eventually, over his madness really, he was crazy and he had these young girlfriends and she got fed up with it after a while. And it was after that that she went back again to acting because she needed the money.
By this time, though, in her 30s and a mother of 2, Joan was no longer a fresh-faced young starlet.
When I went back and I had lunch with my agent one day, and I said, I think I might like to get back into the movies, Tara and Sasha are now they're, 2 and 4, and just, oh, Joni, she said, you're too old, you're 32. She says, nobody wants to know. Just go back and look after the children, write a cookbook.
But Hollywood and acting were what Joan knew, so the advice went unheeded. She had 2 small children to support, and acting meant being able to pay the bills. She was also busy in her personal life, hooking up with husband number 3 the year she and Newley divorced. Ron Cass was the successful boss of the Beatles' Apple record label. They married in 1972 and had baby Katie. But 4 years later, the relationship had started to sour.
Cass lost his job and started drinking too much and started taking drugs. And never worked again. Couldn't get a job anywhere. So Joan found that she was supporting them both, and Katie and her 2 older children. She always seemed to pick the wrong guy for some reason or other. And she admitted once that she'd never learned from her mistakes.
I have made mistakes, but, show me a person who hasn't made a mistake and I'll show you a person who hasn't lived properly.
Matthew Butson works at Getty Images in West London. With over 80 million images here, it's the world's largest photographic archive. Joan's pictures are all over the place. Her photos have been ending up back here for over 60 years.
So most of these images from this file are from a magazine called Picture Post, which was very, very popular, seminal news weekly. And this is a typical photo story they did on Joan Collins around the time she first made it to Hollywood in the mid-50s. They were they were really heavily reliant on the press to, promote them and push them. So she'd have had very little control over which images were used. In those days, there was nothing like publicists' approval that there is today. These are what we call the picture post contacts. And you can see through the crop marks, what they've decided to use to print up. I wouldn't have thought Joan ever saw these at the time. She wouldn't have necessarily seen anything until it was published in the magazine. So everything's split up into chunks. So this is 60 to 63. So by this time, she'd had some success. So the press were very much interested in her as a star. So she'd always make sure she looks like a star. Now, there's much more of an interest in a star not looking like a star, looking like they just got out of bed or no makeup or, bad hair day, etc., etc. So, but that wasn't the interest then. Now we move into the 70s. I mean, this is very typical, press fodder material, whether it's to publicise a film or, her latest venture. I mean, there was, nothing particularly daring about the shots or pap-like about the shots. There was, still a certain amount of that sort of star respect. I don't honestly know how many shots of Joan there are in this collection. The prints that we've seen today, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So for every one of those prints, there's probably about 50 images that have never been published.
Now in her 40s, the 1970s were a tough decade for Joan. Her saviour from the acting doldrums came from an unusual quarter.
Her sister Jackie, who by now was a very successful novelist, she wrote soft porn novels, one of which was called The Stud. Joan persuaded Jackie to give her the film rights in this book. And she made the film, and it was a very sleazy number. I mean, it was a pretty explicit, sleazy film.
We are, after all, animals. That's the way animals are. We are created in a way to mate. People are interested in sex.
It just became hugely successful. And she then got another one of Jackie's books called The Bitch, and played the same character, the nymphomaniac wife of the disco owner.
She was shock horror, a woman in her 40s who was kind of doing a sexy role, which, unfortunately is still quite an odd thing even today, but certainly was odd back then.
Had it been somebody who, did not have the kind of feistiness that Joan Collins had, would have sunk them. But in a sense, it kind of changed her image into being, somebody who was pretty vampish. I think particularly the people of Britain, saw her as somebody who was really kind of quite good game for that kind of thing.
Well, actually, I think the Stud and the Bitch were both great movie moments of their time. I mean, maybe they were scandalous then, but they certainly aren't now. There's something quite stylised and charming about them.
It did foreshadow what her career became and gave us the image, I think, that we know of Joan now, which is the man-eater, the sexy, strong, powerful man-eater.
She started playing bitches, and that really rescued her career, and she played bitches from then on.
With an eye for a business opportunity, Joan wanted to cash in on the success of her movies, so she wrote a surprisingly candid autobiography.
Many people were astonished that she was quite so forthcoming and was quite so brutal about herself and about her men.
I don't feel that I said anything about any of the particular people in the book that have not been chronicled by the newspapers. I never have revealed a secret that people don't know.
Her children were appalled as well because she was so honest about her sex life, about the things she'd done, about her misbehaviours. They were so horrified they told us they no longer wanted to live with her. They wanted to go and live with Tony Newley.
Joan also dished the dirt on how she'd been badly treated by the Hollywood system.
I didn't knock the whole of the Hollywood community, but I did knock, the producers who dismissed me because I was over 30, because I was considered to be on the slag heap because of my age, even though I probably looked better than anybody else around, she said modestly.
Was that self-belief and confidence in her looks something that Joan had been born with? Naomi Tickle is a facial pattern expert who believes that personality traits can be identified from faces.
She certainly has the angle for the chin here, so very, very stubborn, and doesn't like being told what to do. The more pointed the chin, the more tenacious people. They stick their heels in and do it. I'm going to do it no matter what. She's got that very tight skin over the frame of her face. Joan wants to run things squeaky clean. If things are out of order, it's going to annoy her a lot more. So very particular. Her eyebrows go up and they're more like this. Definitely has cheekbones. Cheekbones will travel. Yes, people who have these very pronounced cheekbones, they adapt to change. They love to travel. They love to explore new places. They focus on the future. They're not ones to hang on to the past. If you look at the head, how it comes up here, it comes up high at the back. These people are very forceful and they like to take their ideas forward. They're almost pushy in some ways. If the ears have a long lobe, this would indicate somebody who wants to help others. The bigger the earlobes, the more people are interested in personal growth, human growth. She's certainly got a lot of face in front of her ears. That's a lot of face, so loves the recognition, loves the applause. She needs that stage. If she doesn't have that stage, it's not the same for her.
In 1981, Joan's acting career was coasting, but there was about to be a dramatic change of gear.
She was suddenly offered the part of a rich bitch in a TV series called Dynasty. She was offered the modern equivalent of £600,000 to act for 5 months in this series. She'd never heard of Dynasty then, she didn't know what it was. And when she saw the videos of it, she thought it was pretty poor. But the money was too much to turn down, so she said yes, and she played this part of Alexis Carrington.
She was just fantastic in that. I loved it. I remember I was a television critic at the time, and I thought, how great is this a job that I'm paid to watch this? It was fantastic on a weekly basis. And she was just such a fabulous bitch.
I was driving down Benedict Canyon with a girlfriend, and all these little kids were waving at me from a station wagon, and they were waving and waving like that. They were about 7 or 8, and so I sort of waved back, and I said, hello. And he said, hello, Alexis, we hate you.
Oh, Alexis was fantastic. She was an absolute uber bitch. Fantastically funny lines, but the character she played was a ruthless businesswoman, and she was very relentless in pursuing what she wanted and in mowing down her enemies.
That's what a lot of people associate with certainly the first half of the 80s and the yuppie era. It was all about being strong and going out and getting what you wanted, and it didn't matter who you kind of clamoured over to get that. If you got it, that was the point, and that's what Alexis did. You know, she didn't care about other people. She just wanted success.
A man can be extremely ambitious and single-minded and very purposeful about his career, and that is considered to be commendable and a wonderful quality. A woman with the same qualities or qualifications is considered to be, you know, an aggressive bitch.
I mean, you could say she was a role model for women, but the fact of the matter was that she was a strong woman and nobody actually could get the better of her. That was pretty good.
It was about the woman on top, the woman who came out on top. The fact that Alexis became the boss of Colby Co and, you know, all the rest of it, I mean, the fact that she rose to the top and beat the men at their own game, I thought was a really terrific role model.
She was a unique character on TV, someone who just utterly spoke her mind, got what she wanted, you know, pushed people out of the way, and was incredibly glamorous while she did all of that.
I think every woman in the 80s would absolutely kill to be Alexis Carrington Colby or Colby Carrington, I forget which. It's the level of glamour that she brought back after the 70s. You know, the 70s might have been disco and decadent, but the 80s went back to a style of glamour that was pure Hollywood.
She was our Hollywood A-list star. Whatever you did, wherever she went, she was royalty.
Alexis has all the best lines, but she has all the best costumes too. You know, Crystal was always slightly pastel and soft-focused, and she looked ghastly in day wear, whereas Alexis always had a really fantastic tight skirt suit, you know, with a nice jacket with a little peplum and a nipped-in waist and those great big shoulders. You know, Alexis was almost dressed as if it was armour. She was like a latter-day Joan Crawford.
She wore a lot of very vibrant colours, cyclamen, purple, black, magenta, that suited her villainess persona. And she made herself, therefore, far more memorable.
Having clothes that would make Alexis stand out from the crowd were not going to come cheap.
And they spent millions on it. You know, Nolan Millen had a crazy budget to dress them all. And they always made such a big thing of there being, you know, thousands of Swarovski crystals or thousands of rhinestones in a single dress, and that she would never wear the same thing twice.
The clothes of Dynasty aren't subtle, they're strong, they're powerful, famously the shoulder pads, which give that sort of, you know, silhouette of just almost being like, you know, an American football player. You know, they just make you look strong and angry and muscular.
That look, the padded shoulder, lots and lots of glitter and glitz, that was copied everywhere on the high street in the 80s.
It was big hair, it was big earrings. I had chandelier type things. You know, if you had a dress on with a jacket on top, the dress would have shoulder pads, and then you'd have the jacket, so you'd have shoulder pad build-up.
If you went out in a nightclub in the 80s, you'd see the effect of the shoulder pads. You'd certainly see the makeup. It'd be a lot heavier. You know, you might see girls working a little bit of fur. You'd certainly see all sorts about it, the big jewellery. I mean, it would be copied. So it really was all about Alexis.
If it was all about Alexis, it wasn't just about the dresses and the shoulder pads. The hair was centre stage too.
These huge wigs, always being changed, different colours, different sizes, with mainly big hair, usually big hair. And that was her style.
I mean, Joan's hair was absolutely fabulous. Copied by, you know, every hairdresser in the country. You know, every woman wanted to look feminine, very sexy. First time really Joan had it cut into the neck, as she'd always wore her hair a lot longer. So really it was quite an edgy look for Joan Collins in the 80s.
So how do you get that edgy 80s hair that was Joan's trademark? Celebrity hairdresser Nick Malenko is going to recreate the classic backcombed look of the 80s that Alexis Carrington Colby made so popular.
The Alexis look really was a very glamorous, wasn't it? The 80s were unbelievable, really. Everything was over the top, everything was larger than life. So this is what we're going to create today. This is why we're using the rollers to give that big bouncy look. Obviously, in the 80s, when you do this sort of look, you'd have a perm as foundation. So that would really give the hair something to bite onto. So it's more important now to put some sort of good sun setting lotion through the hair and then put the rollers in, so they're going to have loads of lift in the root. You need to have lots of backcomb if you want this sort of volume in the hair. It's the only way to get volume. You want that sort of big, bouncy look on the crown, and then falling slightly narrow at the sides of the face, and then going into some nice waves at the bottom as well. Hairspray in the 80s was the main ingredient. You've got to hold the hairstyle together. They didn't want it to move. And also, you need to use quite a strong hairspray to create the 80s look. You've got to be able to go in a Force 9 galley and not move. Brilliant.
From ordinary to iconic Alexis. It's a modern twist on the Dynasty look. In the role of Alexis Carrington Colby, Joan Collins had made Dynasty a worldwide success.
She really was arguably one of the biggest stars of the 1980s. And I think the costumes had an awful lot to do with it, because the acting was essentially pantomime. You know, she was Cruella de Vil. That was the whole feel of the character, smoking those cigarillos and drinking champagne all the time and dragging a mink as though she'd just shot it.
The Hollywood Reporter called her the Queen of Hollywood. She was #1. She was the top actress in the world. And that's amazing when you think that a couple of years earlier she'd been completely skint and desperate for work.
It was a bit like Joan Collins' revenge, you know, that she'd never really made it as a superstar in Hollywood like Joan Crawford, so now on television she was bigger than all of them.
In the midst of dynasty mania and at the peak of her career, Joan's rebellious streak reared its head again.
1983, she posed almost completely naked for Playboy. They ran 12 pages of colour photos of her, looking amazing.
I can think of Joan Collins as a package of goods to be sold, and that's what I decided to do. I'm very honest about it. I did it.
I think if she had not had the fame that she was getting back again in that American soap series, it probably would have been very difficult to pull off. But she knew that she was in the ascendancy again.
I felt that this was some kind of significant statement for all women over 35 or 40.
If you've got the body and you are wanting to make a statement about the fact that you are not on the shelf, that you're not past it, that you are still employable, because that's always, Joan always needs to work, always needs to be employed, then, you know, fair enough, go and do it. I mean, good luck to her.
They paid her the modern equivalent of £200,000 to do a photo shoot. 200,000. And because the magazine sold so many more copies than usual because she was in it, they gave her another 17,000 bonus just to say thank you.
During the dynasty years, a young Swedish singer, Peter Holm, made a brief appearance as husband #4, and after he departed, there was a succession of ever younger men by her side.
Joan Collins and Peter Holm. Oh, wait a minute. That's not Peter Holm. Joan Collins, ladies and gentlemen. Joan Collins from Dynasty Dallas. How are you, sir? Nice
Probably more virile, they're more fun, and she can boss them about. You know, she can be the boss. And presumably they have more stamina.
Why wouldn't you take a young, good-looking guy? Why wouldn't you have that over than some boring old fart who may be wealthy but dull?
Joan was not the only Collins girl who'd done well for herself. Her sister Jackie had made millions from her book sales. Their relationship was often difficult. This famous image of the pair of them was taken by the photographer Terry O'Neill when the sisters were close in the 70s.
Well, I always wanted to photograph the two of them together. I mean, it's very funny. In this particular shot, Joan comes out as very demure and Jackie comes out as looking tough. But I would say that the personalities were the other way around.
The closeness of the sisters was tested when Joan became a successful author of raunchy novels, treading on Jackie's toes.
When Joan started writing, Jackie was really fed up and she said, you know, why are you muscling in on my territory? You've got your career as an actress.
Jackie has made her name and her fortune writing, you know, very, very, very readable, you know, Hollywood bonk books, as it were. And so there's no way that Joan is going to write a book that doesn't have shagging and sex in it. I mean, you know, she's got to be able to compete with Jackie. I don't know how much that rivalry is still going, but I think that'll go to the grave.
Dressing well and being groomed is second nature to me, but even a well-designed piece of clothing won't look right if it doesn't fit properly.
In her 60s and still looking healthy and youthful, Joan proclaimed herself a beauty expert.
She knew she looked good, and she had these theories about how she did look good and how other women could remain looking good. She said, always have a good breakfast, only drink bottled water, never drink tea or coffee or spirits, drink wine.
I think that diets are the greatest disservice perpetrated on modern women. They don't work. I use makeup not not just cosmetically, but because it protects my skin from the elements. I would always put something on my skin. If I didn't have moisturizer, I'd use Vaseline. If I didn't have Vaseline, I'd use coconut oil. If I didn't have coconut oil, I'd even use margarine. I use weights when I'm at home to tone up my arms, but if I'm in a hotel or somewhere where they're not available, I'll use a couple of cans of something. The other thing that I believe in for good skin is sleep, enough sleep. Certainly you can't have good skin if you eat junk food. In restaurants, choose vegetables to start, perhaps asparagus or an artichoke or a green or mixed salad without dressing. So that's what I feel about longevity and aging and getting older, is that I don't even think about it. Everybody else seems to think about it. I myself don't even think about it.
Joan has often talked about how she's kept her skin so youthful looking, even now in her 70s. Skincare expert Leslie Reynolds-Kahn is impressed.
She probably looks good because she's been good at cleansing and moisturising. A lot of women of her age, lots of celebrities her age, actually really knew how to glam up and make the best of themselves. People look at them and aspire to be like them. So somebody who would aspire to be like Joan Collins would think, well, that's great, I'm going to follow all her tips and see if it works for me. But most of them are good, sensible tips. Don't drink too much caffeine, drink plenty of water, have a good breakfast. They're all the things that we would tell anyone, aren't they, really?
John Sigares is one of the UK's leading skin experts. For him, what we put into our body is just as important as what we put onto our face.
Good skin is all about what we're eating and how we live. And that is a very important key for maintaining a good, youthful and plump skin. Berries, broccoli, spinach, they protect our skin from any damage that is happening through our lifestyle. Joan Collins really knows how to take care of her diet as well, and you can really see that skin being very nice and youthful.
Celebrities and film stars have all visited John's Mayfair clinic. He assesses the condition of a client's skin before treating it.
It's very, very important to really feel what is happening underneath this skin before I start using my needles.
John is not a cosmetic surgeon.
Let's go down to business and start working with my very highly specialized needles.
Acupuncture was first used in Chinese medicine to treat an assortment of illnesses. John believes it can also keep the skin looking youthful.
One of the aspects of this treatment is not only enhancing the potential of the skin, but actually firming the skin.
Over 100 needles can be used, but becoming a facial pincushion may be a small price to pay for keeping the surgeon's knife at bay.
Now, your skin knows exactly what to do to help itself.
The almost too perfect skin for a woman in her 70s is now the controversy that surrounds Joan. The talk all about whether she has or whether she hasn't.
I've really seen too many horrible facelifts and horrible Botox. I'm needle phobic. I'm quite happy with the way I look.
I don't know if she's had any work done. If she has, it's not bad. It's been done by somebody really good, because she still looks like Joan.
Her face is impressive. I mean, sometimes it looks like a mask. Well, if she's never had a facelift, she must be one of the 8 great wonders of the world.
So what would be Londoners' guess? Do they think she's had work done?
I think it's safe to say Joan Collins has had some cosmetic surgery, yeah. But I'll be honest, I think she looks quite good for her age, to be honest.
Joan Collins probably has done Botox or
yeah, some plastic stuff, but yeah, implants and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, I would say her surgeon's probably extremely happy with what's been done with her.
She looks fantastic, and whatever she's had done is good work. But undoubtedly, you cannot be in your 70s and have a really tight jawline. And her eyes are more open and rounder than they were when she was in her 50s. She's got these few little lines here, and if you look at her forehead, this little area here, it's completely smooth. So and that may be the reason that she's got quite high eyebrows, that they're just lifted with the Botox. Undoubtedly. And I think it would be nicer for all us mere mortals if she said, look, yeah, I've had a bit of help.
In 2002, husband number 5 came on the scene, Percy Gibson. Over 30 years her junior, it seems he's a keeper.
He is the one I've been waiting for all my life. I know this sounds cliched, but he is so wonderful. He is so kind, he's funny, he's caring, he is fantastically intelligent and clever. He's just perfect. Perfect Percy.
When she and Percy came back from their honeymoon in Malaysia, they were mobbed at the London airport, and one of the reporters shouted, "Joni, don't you worry about the age difference?" And she said, "Look, if he dies, he dies." Well, I like that. The guy's 35 years younger than her.
She's a woman with a sense of humour. I mean, she can be utterly bitchy. She can be utterly ruthless. She can be totally self-obsessed. But she has a sense of humour that will get her out of some situations.
You know, she's had this image of being quite promiscuous. You know, she enjoys, going out with men much younger than herself. She's written racy novels. She's posed nude in Playboy. I think that it's a kind of a demonstration of her own confidence in herself that she's gone ahead and done that. Many other people would have thought twice about doing those kind of things. But I think as far as Joan Collins is concerned, she almost sees it as part of her entire makeup. It didn't really worry her.
Joan may not be much of a worrier, but what she is concerned about, even today, well into her 70s, is that she must never let her standards slip.
I've never seen Joan Collins not look absolutely immaculately made up. And it is always screen makeup. It's not, when you see her at Royal Ascot, she's wearing screen makeup. But you need to, if you want to project that kind of glamour that it's really been Joan Collins' stock in trade for a whole life, then that's it.
And there's a story of a Daily Mail journalist called Baz Bamigboy. Was flying back from New York one day in first class, and Joni came in and quickly, got on the plane, removed all her makeup, changed into a comfortable jumpsuit, and went to sleep straight away. But an hour before they landed in Heathrow, she was woken up. She'd asked to be woken up. She was woken up, disappeared into the loo, and half an hour later emerged absolutely immaculate. The wig in place, perfect makeup, everything very smart clothes. And he just said to her, "Wow, you're amazing. You really look fantastic." And she said, "Oh, darling, it's my armour, it's my protection. I always have to look as good as I possibly can."
She's ruthless about keeping her weight down, and it's very successful. And she is ruthless about keeping her face out of the sun so that damage doesn't make her too wrinkly. And God love her, she's still going.
I think in her 70s, Joan Collins has been smart enough to transcend fashion, really. She knew the high point was the 80s, it was the Dynasty decade, and it's very sensible to maintain that illusion. I don't think it's a secret that she wears wigs, or that there might be a little bit of corsetry under the old costumes these days, but I find that absolutely admirable. It gives her great pleasure to dress like that. It gives us great pleasure to see her dress like that. I just think what's not to like.
From British starlet to Hollywood actress, Dynasty diva to national treasure, Joan Collins has done it all, and always immaculately dressed.
She's always looked stunning. She never lets you down.
But if you see her shopping, say in Chelsea or anywhere like that, and she's got a day outfit on, she still looks a top model and a film star.
She is one of the last of the sort of our stars, as it were. I mean, she behaves like a star, she dresses like a star, she makes up like a star, she has certain standards about clothing, about the way people should dress and how they should behave, and she's a very bright woman.
She's kept to that sort of 50s silhouette in a funny way. Beautifully dressed, beautifully groomed. You know, she's all right, she's behaved like a tramp, but she always dresses like a lady.
Joan is show business's ultimate survivor. Both her personal life and her career have been full of ups and downs, but Joan has risen above them all.
She's been very brave, she's never given up. When she's been down, she's picked herself up and come back again. You have to admire that.
I'm what I am, and that's why I'm where I am. Don't you ever forget that.